Hi, I'm Ilsi Benitez, and this is my reflection for lesson planning and delivery for STEM that I did for sixth graders. What went well during my lesson, I think, was developing the lesson plan. I used the DESI website as my guide to construct my lesson objective and just my lesson plan overall. I used the Missouri standards to view what I needed to incorporate into the lesson. It was kind of like a puzzle piece. Once I saw the standards, I just put everything together and it made sense. I was like, oh, okay, this is actually easier than I thought. So that's what went well for me. Also preparing, I used my sister, which she's in sixth grade and was in the class that I taught the math lesson to. I used her as my guinea pig and I taught the lesson to her first. I taught it and I asked her, hey, what parts do you think you were confused? What parts do you think you understood well enough? And she was like, Ilsi, well, I think this is where I was a bit confused. It was misleading. I don't know what you meant by this. On the other hand, I feel like this is what you're doing good on. And obviously she was like, if I'm confused, most likely my fellow classmates will be confused. So you might want to work on that, which was good to hear because, again, it helped me prepare more. It helped me to view it from the student's perspective. Okay, maybe my word choice is not good enough, or maybe this is too vague. I'm not explaining it well enough. So I worked on that. Emphasizing the importance of certain details. At some point during my lesson while I was teaching it, I told them that there was a huge difference between the absolute value bars and the parentheses. They're obviously not the same thing. I also emphasized how it was important that when we're adding or when we're doing absolute value equations, I take, for example, the absolute value of -7 plus the absolute value of 3. It would not be the same way if you'd pronounce it, oh, -7 plus 3. You want to say, oh, it's the absolute value of -7, because from there on, you're finding the absolute value of that number, which is 7, and then the absolute value of 3, which is 3, and then from there on, you add it. It's not just going straight into solving it. So that's something I emphasized on. Explaining the material, my cooperating teacher, Ms. Thompson, was pleased with how I explained the lesson overall. She thought it was understandable that the students should have, and they did, understand what I was trying to explain to them. So she was happy with that, and I'm glad. Some things I could improve on, and hopefully will, would be more preparation. But I feel like the more I prepared it, the more I can, would have been better. Asking questions. The type of student that does not like asking questions. So maybe at times I learned that it's better to get out of that comfort zone so that, in the long run, it helps you. Just asking questions like, oh, I don't understand this, or I really need help like coming up with this objective or how to word this objective. So things like that. Asking for advice. It was my very first time teaching a math class or just a class in general, especially sixth graders. So for me, it was pretty nerve-wracking. Again, yeah, they're younger than me, but it was like my very first time. So obviously it was going to be nerve-wracking. So maybe just asking my cooperating teacher or my teaching professions advisor, Ms. Callahan, this is my first time doing this and I'm pretty nervous. Like, what can I do to like ease that tension or ease those nerves? So asking for advice, moving around the room more, being able to just see where the students are struggling and what they are doing well on. And just also, it really helps if I were to have moved around the room more, it would have helped me see, oh, like the whole class is overall doing well, or the whole class is not understanding this. Maybe I should explain it more. Clearing up any confusion, again, that kind of goes back to asking questions. Paying attention to students' progress, again, that goes back to moving around the room more. I've learned that's very important to, it's very important to pay attention to students' progress, because most of the time, especially this class that I taught, they don't like to speak out about whether, oh, I'm confused on this. So it's very important for us as aspiring teachers and just as teachers to notice that. So again, that's something I want to improve on, because I did not move around the room as much. Not overloading students with information. That's something I learned and I need to improve on, since I've already had a bunch of math taught to me. I thought I just went in there and I said a couple things that I think I should have not said, because it seemed like it confused some of the students. So obviously I have way much more math experience than these sixth graders do. So just over speaking on what I already know is something I need to learn on. Like keeping in mind, oh, these are just sixth graders. They're not going, maybe what I see as, oh, they have to understand this, is something that they probably won't. Because again, it's kind of like placing myself in their shoes. So that's something I need to work on. What I have learned from this teaching experience, first of all, I thought it was amazing, even though it was nerve-wracking, but it was very, very amazing experience. It takes time to plan a lesson plan. Of course, every lesson varies. Every lesson is different. So, for example, this lesson was pretty easy to form. It didn't take me that much. But as opposed to other lessons, obviously it's going to need time in advance, just a certain period of time just dedicated to that lesson. So giving students more opportunities to answer. By that, I meant like giving them, and giving me and giving them, me and the aspect of asking questions, them and the aspect of answering those questions. So just asking and them being able to answer. Involving the class in their learning. So again, it kind of goes back to giving them more opportunities and asking questions and having them speak more. Because obviously me being still a student in high school, it's boring to just hear the teacher stand in the middle of the classroom and just teach and talk the whole hour. So granting the students that ability to just take control, a little bit of control on their learning is good. And I think something I want to do in my future. Cold calling, even though I am not a fan of cold calling, I'm the type of student that does not like cold call. I think it's very important, and I learned that day. For example, that class, like I said, is a very quiet class. They don't tend to like to volunteer as much. It really helps you get out of that comfort zone. It helps students be engaged in their learning and what the teacher is teaching. So cold call, definitely. Having a plan. So aside from the plan you already have to teach, just having a plan to yourself. So, okay, when I enter the classroom, or when my students enter the classroom, this should be done by this time, or I want this to go this way, and okay, maybe do this, so because maybe this will help them more in the long run than what you originally had planned. So just having like a few notes to yourself would probably help, and I think that would have helped me too. And then lastly, being prepared for the unexpected. I'm going to tie this back to when I kind of said some things that the students were like, wait, hold up a minute. I don't know what you're talking about, because I received those blank stares, and for a minute there I was starting to freak out because the students were starting to get confused and I just didn't want to lose them. And so eventually I was able to get them back on track. But again, it's being prepared for the unexpected, because again, you can come in and say, oh, it's going to go this way, but at the end of the day, go the opposite way. So and that's it. Thank you so much for hearing me.